The U.S. Department of Education just ceased operation of its student loan debt relief applications website after a federal judge in Texas ruled Biden's executive order unconstitutional. But conservatives shouldn't celebrate the decision because even though it's handed Biden a proverbial loss, it's a signal event showing stunning judicial ignorance of the U.S. Constitution. Hi everyone, I'm Gardner Goldsmith for MRCTV, and as most of us likely know, contemporary political stories offer a lot of education if one can get over the personality-oriented attacks and instead focus on the institutions, the history, the economics, the ethics, and the so-called rules that those personalities might be attacking or sustaining. Take, for example, the education one can get by noting the U.S. Department of Education's removal of its student loan debt relief applications webpage less than a day after U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Texas Fort Worth Division Judge Mark Pittman vacated Biden's debt forgiveness executive order. Now, that was a stunt that Biden unilaterally pulled in August. Of course, gaining a lot of political smiles from college students with debts, I suspect. Well, Breitbart's Hannah Blue reports on the Department of Education move to remove this page. And she tells us where things stand. Quote, courts have issued orders blocking our student debt relief program. As a result, at this time, we are not accepting applications. We are seeking to overturn those orders, the website reads, adding that it's holding the applications of those who already applied for relief. The case on which Judge Pittman ruled was Myra Brown et al. V. U.S. Department of Education et al. And it hinged on the fact that Brown and fellow plaintiff Alexander Taylor both had loans that didn't fall within the parameters of Biden's executive order. Wrote Pittman Thursday, quote, plaintiffs Myra Brown and Alexander Taylor both have student loans. Brown is ineligible for any debt forgiveness under the program because her loans are commercially held, and Taylor is ineligible for the full $20,000 in debt forgiveness under the program because he did not receive a Pell Grant. Because Brown loses out on $20,000 in debt forgiveness and Taylor loses out on $10,000, they disagree with the lines drawn for the program's eligibility criteria. Okay, so let's pull that apart. First, the judge determined that the plaintiffs had standing to claim that they were going to be harmed, which seems rather flimsy at best. The non-conference of or disproportionate offering of a tax-subsidized blessing is not a loss. So perhaps that's one of the early lessons that we can learn from this case. After all, in asking for debt relief, the plaintiffs are asking for us and our progeny, because of course the U.S. is in massive debt, to pay their debts. Undoubtedly, the government will not grant us relief when their acquisitive horde of tax agents come banging on our bank account doors. The second lesson we can derive stems from another portion of the judge's ruling, in which on page 1, he states, quote, the Constitution vests all legislative powers in Congress. This power, however, can be delegated to the executive branch. The former observation is correct, but the latter claim is patently, manifestly, inarguably false. And that is a pretty darn big deal. The entire makeup of the 3 federal branches is such that one branch cannot delegate its so-called power to another. That's why they're called the legislative, executive, and judicial branches. And that's such a basic construct that even middle school students get it. I've been in front of them. In fact, the president can't take on legislative power. Collectively viewed, executive orders are a form of usurpation of the legislative power to pass statutes, and it stems from the troubling fact that Congress over the years has passed so many statutes creating federal executive offices that any president can now use those offices like little foot soldiers or pawns to do what he likes, as long as he can claim some excuse, such as a pandemic emergency, which, of course, is not an excuse at all, because again, no one in the federal government is granted any constitutional power to declare an emergency any more than they have the power to claim the second coming of Christ. The powerful lesson in the judge's absurd statement might actually be overlooked by some conservatives who otherwise are celebrating the fact that Biden's executive order has been blocked. And that is a big shame. Many conservatives, including the judge who was appointed by Donald Trump, are focusing on the emptiness of Biden's executive order claim that under the so-called HEROES Act, and that title is an acronym derived from the 2020 Higher Education Relief Opportunities for Students Act, that he was granted somehow the power to have the Education Department waive or modify the debts that students owe U.S. agencies, and the Department of Education in particular. As Judge Pittman notes in his ruling, Biden's lawyers claimed that the HEROES Act allowed El Presidente to, quote, waive or modify any statute or regulatory provision applicable to the student financial assistance programs under Title IV of the Act, as the Secretary deems necessary in connection with a war or military operation or national emergency. Did anyone notice how Joe Biden keeps extending the so-called national emergency now through to April of 2023? Despite him having no power to maintain it, and despite Donald Trump's original March 13th, 2020 claim of a national emergency, so-called, being a bald-faced claim of something a president has no constitutional or moral power to claim. One wonders if the pandering to college students we're seeing as the Bidenistas try to push the issue to the Supreme Court has something to do with this extension of all of this national emergency nonsense. Judge Pittman ruled that Biden was incorrect to include students with college debt on the same level as military personnel operating during war. And that, of course, seems logical at first blush. At first blush, it seems fair to offer a break from government debt for people fighting in wars. But in a volunteer military, that's not really ethical either, because the members of that military freely enter and freely take on whatever the debt in question might be. And perhaps most important of all of this is what is missing from Judge Pittman's ruling, a ruling which undoubtedly the Biden administration will appeal, hence Biden's extension of the so-called emergency. That's the fact that members of Congress swore to protect and defend the Constitution, as did Judge Pittman. I've heard people wonder, was this debt relief idea that the judge just vacated simply a Biden stunt to attract young people for political reasons? Well, that latter likely is correct, likely is a fair judgment of the Bidenistas' move. But the Bidenistas might extend their shadow play some more to keep up appearances, giving us time to teach others what the Constitution actually says. Goodness knows, many people, including Judge Pittman, sadly, seem quite confused about that. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Hey, thank you for joining us at Rumble. And don't forget to hit the plus sign over there. They don't censor us there. It's great to have you at Rumble. Please subscribe there. Our numbers are rising highly. Of course, we'll try to see you at YouTube. They've been pretty good to us recently, so we'll see you in the comments section there. And visit us at MRCTV.org, MRCTV.org. In the 35th year of the Media Research Center, please donate to help support our great cause to keep the leftist media minds on their most honest, if we can if we could ask them of that. And we'll see you on Twitter. We'll see you on Facebook. We'll see you on TikTok and Instagram and on Parler. Yay. Parler's back. All right. If you want to find me, you can find me on Gab at Gardner Goldsmith, and on Twitter, I'm at Gard Goldsmith. For MRC TV, I'm Gardner Goldsmith.